Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part 2 of 4 of our video lessons about civil rights. My name is Miss Jennifer Blank, and I will be your guide on this journey. This lesson will focus on the modern civil rights movement, and let's get going with some key ideas, some key vocab. We're going to talk about the separate but equal doctrine. We're going to talk about Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. We're going to talk about de facto and de jure segregation, the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 68, and also the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So the end of the separate but equal doctrine, which was established by Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896, ended in 1954 with Chief Justice Earl Warren and the Warren Court. This case overturned Plessy v. Ferguson. It said that the separate but equal doctrine was unconstitutional. The courts ordered the schools to desegregate with all deliberate speed. That is a direct quote from the decision. But many schools in the South did remain segregated for many years. It wasn't until a little bit later that a full desegregation effort began. But Brown versus Board of Education was a seminal movement, or a seminal moment in the civil rights movement. It represents a significant moment in time because of how much began to change after that case. The status quo had been maintained for so many decades, and that Brown overturned, and when it overturned the separate but equal doctrine, it also overturned the status quo, and civil rights started to move very quickly after that. Well, comparatively speaking, it moved quickly. All right, so I want to bring back this graphic that I used in the previous video lesson, okay? The modern civil rights movement had its heyday from 1954 to 1968, and you see here there are a number of events, okay, that are particularly important that we need to focus in on. So in 54, we talked about Brown versus Board of Ed. In 55, there's a murder of Emmett Till. He was a black teenager who was found dead after flirting with a white woman. Evidence points to 2 white men, but they are acquitted by an all-white jury. News of the case brings nationwide attention to the civil rights movement. Also in 55, you have the Montgomery Bus Boycott that was inspired by Rosa Parks and her refusal to give up her seat on the bus. Moving forward, in the middle of 1857, you have the beginning of full segregation. President Eisenhower sends the National Guard to Little Rock Central High School to protect 9 black students as they desegregate. That was Little Rock, Arkansas. We also have the sit-in campaigns that took place. Students across the country staged sit-ins to protest segregation in restaurants. We have the Freedom Rides in 1961. Birmingham protests took place a little bit later. Let's go to the next slide. So the Birmingham protests happened early in 1963. You also have the March on Washington and the assassination of JFK. All right, in 1964, Martin Luther King is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Also in 64, you have the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Legislation was signed by President Johnson and forbid discrimination in all public places. In 1965, early, you have Bloody Sunday. Police forces attack a group of protesters in Selma, Alabama during a march to the state capital, Montgomery. It was called Bloody Sunday. You have the assassination of Malcolm X. Also in 1965, he was a black nationalist and a previous leader of the Nation of Islam. He was assassinated in New York. The Voting Rights Act was also passed in 1965. Black voter registration levels triple after the banning of literacy tests and poll taxes. Those are just 2 of the barriers to voting. In 67, you have a Supreme Court appointment of Thurgood Marshall, a lawyer who helped to win the Brown versus Board of Education. He's the first black appointee to the Supreme Court. And then in 1968, of course, Martin Luther King is assassinated at his motel. He dies, leaving the country in shock. The 60s were a very tumultuous time, ladies and gentlemen, not just for civil rights, but for American life and history in general. But for more specific discussions on American history and life in general, you should consult another teacher's video lessons for that. This one is about government. So, school integration, what does this look like? Well, first we gotta talk about our terms. We gotta identify our key terms. So de facto segregation is racial segregation that occurs because of past social and economic conditions and residential racial patterns. So de facto is segregation by private citizens. And might I add, this applies to all racial groups. There are many racial groups and people of various races who self-segregate on purpose. This includes white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American. You can take your pick of any racial group, and there are pockets within racial groups that choose to self-segregate. This is called de facto segregation. De jure segregation is something different. That occurs because of laws or administrative decisions by public agencies. Separate but equal doctrine was an example of de jure segregation. Now, court-ordered busing was put into play during the desegregation era. It does fail to improve educational outcomes, and you also have a resurgence of minority schools in the wake of integration of the schools. In the 1950s, local resistance to inequalities built significantly. This is in large degree what sparked Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, who had a philosophy of nonviolence, to speak their mind and to stage nonviolent protests and civil disobedience. The Black Power movement, which was led by Malcolm X for a time, advocated violence to achieve the goals of equality. Now, the climax of the civil rights movement comes with civil rights legislation. You have the Civil Rights Act of '64, which broke down barriers to voter registration and actual voting, broke down barriers to discrimination in public accommodations, public schools, and employment. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 added some additional voter protections and gave the federal government the ability to check in on the southern states, to interfere if there was evidence of discrimination. The federal government could come in and mandate certain things of the states during voting. You had a lot of urban riots, and then you have the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which passed housing reforms and prohibits steering, blockbusting, and redlining. If you're curious about what those things are, you should look them up. This is an assignment. All right, so after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, this graph represents the increase of black voter registration in 7 southern states that were covered by that act. And let me give you a close-up of this view. So as you can see, the numbers increase dramatically. It's dramatic when you look at what the state of affairs was in 1965 versus what it became in 2004. There's a distinct difference here, so it's indicative that the Voting Rights Act had a large impact and increased black participation in the vote. So, consequences of civil rights legislation, big picture. Political participation increases, not just for African Americans, but also for other minorities. Economic and education conditions continue to improve. Not perfect, but it got significantly better than it was prior to these reforms. Anti-racism is a new dominant ideology. It is no longer cool to be racist, to be quite frank. Doesn't mean that racism is gone, but outward KKK and Jim Crow style racism is no longer socially acceptable, and that's something to celebrate. It doesn't mean the work is done. It doesn't mean that racism is gone, but that is an important movement forward. And we should acknowledge that while at the same time pushing to eradicate racism. Period. But lingering social and economic disparities continue. People debate as to why that is the case on all sides of the racial spectrum, but it is important to understand how far we've come while at the same time recognizing how far we still need to go. That's it for Civil Rights Part 2. I will see you in Civil Rights Part 3.